All right, man, peace. So as you brothers probably know by now, Anthony Davis, the superstar power forward slash center of the New Orleans Pelicans, at least for now, has finally decided that he was going to crawl out of his turtle shell and deliver the message that supposedly he did not mean for it to leak, that he wanted to be traded. And we know why he's doing that, because there are rumblings of tampering and collusion floating around Anthony Davis. And make no mistake about it, there is going to be a quote-unquote reckoning over this. What we've seen from Anthony Davis and last year, Kyrie Irving and Kawhi Leonard, this is something that the NBA business model cannot tolerate. You can't have guys no longer honoring their contract. It's one thing if you're a Lebron James or a Kevin Durant and you decide that you want to utilize your free agency rights, which have been granted to you through the collective bargaining agreement. But now the most prominent players in the NBA think that they can dictate where they want to go to in the middle of their contract. And you simply can't have that. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
The city, organization, fans, everything I feel like I could.
Bullshit. You didn't do everything that you could, because if you really were trying to do everything that you could, you would have played out your contract. That's how that works. Then you become a free agent. Then you can go where you want to go, Anthony Davis. That's my issue with this. It's not even so much that he's quote-unquote giving up on leading his team to a championship, because he's not a championship alpha in this current NBA anyway. He's just not. He's going to have to be the second or third star on a championship team in this current NBA. Now, maybe 25 years ago, if you would have given him a great wing player, maybe some defensive players, he maybe could have made a run to threaten for a title. But in this NBA, Anthony Davis is a beta, maybe even a third-class superstar on a championship team. As great as he is, and as great as the metrics are that he puts up, I'm not even quite sure if he can be the second best player on a championship team, because everything today is so three-point oriented. But if he's able to team up with LeBron James or Kyrie, who knows? Maybe they could push for a championship. But once again, my issue with all this is wait until your contract is over. Then you leave. Fulfill your obligation. You signed the contract.
Don't know how long I'm going to play this game. People's careers are short. And I feel like it's my time to move on. My reputation didn't, drop the story or leak the story or anything like that. So
now he states that his representation did not drop the story or leak the story. That's what he's alleging.
Someone else gave it to a reporter. A reporter called my agent.
He says that someone else gave the story to a reporter. Who's that someone else? Who knew about this other than you and your representation? Were you telling your family members? Of course, you're not going to impugn the reputation of your representation in Rich Paul, Clutch Sports, etc. So you're not going to drop dime on them, but we know what this is really about. Right now, the NBA owners are very upset. They're probably blowing up Adam Silver's hotline saying, what the hell is going on here? Every time these guys get upset, they're going to start demanding trades if you don't put a stop to this. So now he has to act like the reason why the story broke is because somebody that is not involved with Clutch Sports or himself relayed the trade demand to somebody in the media. But that's not making sense, because who would have found it out other than you and Rich Paul, unless you guys were telling random people, or you had a plant put something out there to a media member so that you can get this ball rolling.
And asking was just true. So we never wanted to leak it to the media. Wanted to do everything in-house, but
how would you do everything in-house? Eventually, the GM of the New Orleans Pelicans was going to let it be known that you had demanded a trade. So what you're saying is not making sense. The real issue is that you want to leave New Orleans as the quote-unquote nice guy. The reality of the situation is that, as Charles Barkley said so well, the fix has been in since last summer. Since you signed with Rich Paul, everybody knew what you were going to do, bro. I mean, come on.
But that wasn't on us. You don't know how long you're going to play this game, and I feel like I'm in my prime right now. I'm playing at an elite level, and, I think that, I want to make sure that I take advantage of that. I'm all about legacy. The money comes and goes. At the end of the day, it's a business.
All the rhetoric that he just put out there, it's about his legacy and money comes and goes and all that nonsense. That's what LeBron James and Rich Paul were telling him at that dinner table. Anthony, don't worry about the money. With all the money that you're going to make off the court playing in LA, your sneaker contract, etc., we're going to make that up. We're going to put you in a few movies, everything. Don't worry about it. But if you stay in New Orleans, you're going to end up being another Karl Malone, another Charles Barkley, another Patrick Ewing, another Reggie Miller. Is that what you want for your career? That's the pimp game that they ran on this dude.
You know, if that's what they want to do, then they have every right to do it. But I just want to let them know that, you know, when I'm ready to play and able to play, I'm ready to suit up.
Bullshit. You're not going to be back until after the trade deadline. If New Orleans has not moved you until after the trade deadline, then that will be when you come back. You're not going to come back until the trade deadline, and that's probably a mutual agreement between your representation and the Pelicans to make sure that you do not sustain any major injuries.
Welcome back. All right, a lot to unpack after what we just heard from AD. Scotty, we'll start with you. Do you understand where Anthony's coming from?
I understand where he's coming from very well. He's trying to take the heat off of himself and his representation because that story leaked, and it's really starting to look bad on the NBA that their prominent superstars are all demanding trade before their contract is up. It makes it look like their word and their signature means nothing at all.
I totally understand. You know, he's definitely one of the top 5 players in the league, and
I'm not quite sure about that. I would say that he's top 5 when it comes to stat output, but when it comes to impact, I'm not quite sure if he's top 5. Compare what he's done with his team to what Giannis has done or is doing up there in Milwaukee. Right now, they've been relatively equivalent. Anthony Davis will get the slight edge because at least he's been to the second round of the playoffs. But when we look at what Giannis is doing with a cast of characters, no other stars in Milwaukee other than himself. And right now they have one of the best, if not the best, overall records in the NBA. What's going on with Anthony Davis that he's not impacting his team to nowhere near the equivalent degree? Does Giannis have a player on his team as good as Jrue Holiday?
just not seeing this kid in the postseason, I think is bad for our game. So,
well, I think that we see him more in the postseason if he could stay healthy.
So I'm happy that he wants to go and compete. He want to play in the postseason, and he's done all he can for the Pelicans.
Allegedly.
I feel like, and it's time for him to part ways.
I agree. It would be time for them to part ways if this season was going to be his last contractual obligated season.
I was talking to somebody last night who's very close, to Anthony Davis.
And let me say this very quickly before Michael Wilbon continues. I'm sure that there's going to be somebody out there that says, well, what are you talking about? These teams, they could trade somebody whenever they want. Well, you know what? That's something that you understand when you sign the contract. If you're a great enough player, then you can have what's called a no-trade clause in your contract. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to figure out if Anthony Davis has one already. I know that LeBron James has one. I know that Steph Curry has one. Carmelo Anthony had one. I'm trying to remember if that was one of the parameters of his previous contract, that he had a no-trade clause.
It has been. And there's a feeling that this is very difficult for him, that seeing all these things, seeing him scrubbed from the video, the previous, that all these things, including the decision.
Right, but what do you expect? You basically telling the Pelicans that you don't want to fuck with them anymore. If you dump your woman, you can't get mad when she takes all the photos of you and her off of her Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, whatever the hell these broads be putting all their pictures up at.
Decision itself to go this route is very difficult for us. And I understand that. It is still very young guys that we're talking about. But then the hardcore business end of it comes back to, Scotty, do you think we will see Anthony Davis in a Pelicans uniform again?
It's possible. If the Lakers don't make this shit really happen. I heard they're playing games right now. If the Pelicans trade Davis before the deadline and they trade him to the Lakers, it's going to be because the official edict came down from their owner, Benson. Look, make this shit go through. I don't want this to carry over all the way into the offseason. That's why that trade would happen. Because there's no way in the world that you're going to tell me that the Lakers could offer a better package to the Pelicans than the Boston Celtics or whoever.
I do. Just judging on what I saw a few nights ago when he got injured, I still think that he's wholeheartedly still with the team and that he will go back and play.
I think he'd play for them. He talked about that this morning. The question is, will they let him play? Because we saw what happened to Boogie Cousins to that team.
If you're one of his teammates, why the hell would you want to still play with him? He hates the team so bad that he's willing to nullify the remainder of his contract to get the hell up out of there. I mean, it's like you stand with somebody and they already done told you, I found somebody that I'd rather be with, but I'm going to stay with you for the next 3 months to help you pay the rent. You'd be like, the fuck are you here for? Get out of here.
Last year, if he plays and hurts himself, they do not get anything for him in trade. I am very curious to see what happens there.
I mean, I think he's a gamer. I think he's a player that is definitely going to give his heart and soul to his teammates.
Bullshit. If that was the case, he'd play out his contract.
As long as he's a part of the Pelican organization. So I do expect him to come back after All-Star break and play for them if he's not traded.
Interesting. And Alvin Gentry said this morning there's been no decision made on that, right?
Alvin Gentry, what happened to this stuff about how you're not going to trade Anthony Davis even for Beyonce?
Right, so
they got to figure out when they're going to make the trade this week.
Right, so
which is a different
right,
question.
exactly.
Yes.
We have the Pelicans. We have our buyers and sellers board, which is one of.
When you look at Anthony Davis's numbers, you have to go back to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his first 5 or 6 years with the Milwaukee Bucks to have a player who was putting up proficiency numbers at the center position similar to that. 28, 29 points a game, 13, 14 rebounds a game, the blocks, the shooting percentage. What Anthony Davis does just as a stat player is incredible.
Which is one of my favorite things on earth this week. And we have had the Pelicans, of course, correctly in the sellers column. We'll see how quickly they're going to sell.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how things go for Mr. Anthony Davis. I think that even he understands that he's looking kind of slime ballish right now. He's looking like a dude who's trying to tiptoe out the door. You know, like you ever watch any of those cold case stories about some 15-year-old or 16-year-old teenager who sneaks out at night to go smoke cocaine with their friends and shit? Like he's looking like that. Like LeBron and Rich Paul outside his window. Yo, come on, let's go smoke this rock. And Anthony Davis's eyebrows go up, all three of them, and he heads on out the window. That's how he's looking right now. But anyway, peace.